Hi, friends. I'm Les Mood. Normally, I'm the host of Hot Energy News and the Energy Independent Show. Today, I'm hosting a panel with the Clean Energy Revolution. And today, we have Niels Soderstrom from Renblock, and we have
Right.
Luke Johnson from Liquid Star. They're leaders in the blockchain aspect of the energy movement towards renewable energy and advancing decarbonization, all the good things that make it possible for us to make progress. These guys are in the middle of it. So I'd like to welcome the both of you.
Thank you,
Good
Les.
morning.
So we'll start with Nils. Nils, can you describe a little bit about yourself and what Renblock is doing in the blockchain energy sector?
So I have worked in energy most of my life, both large scale energy solutions and then small off grid solutions. And I've founded Remblock about 2 years back now because we saw that a big issue with the energy industry is that there's currently no way to actually know what the provenance of the energy you're getting is. So we're trying to solve that fine issue of what we call energy transparency, letting you know exactly what type of energy you're consuming. And blockchain has been a big part of that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. So Luke, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Liquid Star?
Good morning. Yeah, so I'm also coming from the energy industry in the solar sector for a few years. And so I've been working on mainly solar power plants, energy design, and all of those aspects. And about 5 years ago, we got into different aspects of blockchain energy. And so we wrote a few papers there, but then we got into basically Liquid Star, which is like energy for people who need it off grid. And to do that, we needed to use different aspects of ways to share energy with batteries. And one of them came up as blockchain. So that's what I got into. And now we're deep in the midst of it with different solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I find it interesting. I'm from the development and design and solar industry as well, and the two of you are taking your experiences where you found some problems and or some opportunities, and you're implementing this blockchain technology. And the way I see opportunity is being in the sector is for collaboration, for communication, for inspiration, and the providing of news as well as insight. So I really appreciate the both of you being on here for that reason, because that's what I'm doing. Niels, I'm curious what, speaking of transparency, what effect does transparency have on the consumer's mindset when it comes to energy?
Well, transparency has been the driver in any business developments over the last couple of years in any market, and it is so in energy as well. We're seeing that people are asking more questions about energy. People are getting more and more involved in energy. From my personal view of it has been that energy has been pretty untangible for consumers over the last couple of years. At least in the Western developed world. Um, I've been working somewhat in Africa as well, and in underdeveloped places you don't have the same kind of availability that we have in Europe or in Sweden or in the US for that instance. You go to a cafe, you plug in your phone, you plug in your computer, and you just expect there to be electricity or any kind of energy coming out of the outlet. So in that sense, people haven't really had that mindset to sort of question what goes on behind the meter, what goes on behind the wall of that. You just expect it to work, sort of. But on the other side, when it comes to things like sustainability, people are very highly motivated, highly involved, and that is sort of where we found that marrying energy with transparency in a sustainable view sort of gives people that um, it gives that credibility that you're actually seeing what you're getting and you can make actual impacts and choices on that. um, we're seeing a lot of a lot of demand for it as soon as people get an understanding for it. We see a lot of demand because a lot of people are engaged. A lot of people want to know these things, and it's on the cusp of just handing them the tools and handing them the right questions, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, some of your studies and the research that you're providing now to potential partners is actually pretty inspiring to know that by having access to or knowing what energy you're using, it can shape your behavior and therefore encourage you or discourage you when to use energy. So if it's clean and renewable and you know that, you can hurry up and charge your phone. But if you could wait to charge your phone and you know that the energy is dirty, maybe you won't, and therefore you'll help advance renewable energy in that way. So that's really really empowering, pun intended. So Luke, you're referred to at Liquid Star, you and the team being the Uber for electricity. Can you describe what Liquid Star does to earn that title?
Well, I think it's maybe a self-proclaimed title, but we'll try to live up to it. One of the main things about Liquid Star is UX, or your user interface, and we're really highly focused on that. So bringing the ease of use to the people who want to get the energy in the simplest way with the least steps is really what we're focused on, and that's actually quite difficult to go through that stack, but to get it so those people can get and use their energy very efficiently and cleanly and in an easy way in many different markets. But some of our target markets, I'll give a story, is in Lagos in Nigeria, which we've done a pilot there. We've done actually 2 pilots in Nigeria. And basically, we've come back with a lot of feedback about how they're actually interacting with our application and how they can actually get their battery. And yeah, there's some really good feedback. And now we're really going into how we're going to integrate that with different aspects of our own platform, but also going further to either a protocol or different aspects of how it might interact with different blockchains and different smart contracts. So, but that's all behind the back end, like under the hood, as they say. And actually, people just want to get the energy, and that's really what we're focused on. And they shouldn't really want to know what's under the hood, as to say.
Absolutely. Nils, could you describe, for the layman, what blockchain allows for and in the trust factor? How can corporations and individuals know that the data that they're being fed is trustworthy, or how can they be confident in that data?
Well, first of all, blockchain has been a buzzword for quite some time, and it's been and people have formed different. It's been something that's seemed very complicated. Well, it really in essence is not, or theoretically it's not. What it is basically just a ledger, a long list of receipts describing transactions in between people, in between computers, in between whatever entity makes a transaction. And a transaction in that point can be pretty much whatever you want it to be. If my solar panels on my rooftop were to produce a kilowatt of hours and send that to my house to be consumed, that can be considered a transaction. And a blockchain would then simply just keep track of every single transaction. So in that sense, in those terms, it's very simple, not at all complicated. What makes it very, very powerful is the fact that it is what's called immutable. You can't change it. And the way that works is that in a normal transaction, if you have a transaction between 2 people, you keep that transaction written up in a ledger. You do the same thing in blockchain. It's just that that one ledger is copied and spread across the network of people, anyone subscribing to that blockchain. So in order for us to make a new transaction, we have to make sure that that transaction gets shared and spread across all the ledgers simultaneously. And if it doesn't, it's not going to get accepted. So in that sense, it's extremely difficult, bordering on impossible to change something, and go in and alter the ledger historically. So you're gonna have a receipt of transactions, a receipt of people consuming energy that can't be changed afterwards. You can't do anything with it, which in that sense creates that sort of very high level trust that hasn't been present really in the energy industry, at least not from our standpoint. So what this means to energy is that if I say that I consume 1 megawatt of energy from your solar panels or your wind farm, and we both write that to our blockchain, we can always go back and say that, hey, this actually happened this very second, this very hour. So that is the power of it, the trustworthy receipt or historical ledger, if you want.
Absolutely. Luke, I'm curious what your thoughts are from a design perspective and from, having experience like the three of us in development. What do you see the role of blockchain playing in the efficiency of information, and what role will that play in developing renewable energy projects?
That's, pardon me, that's a very good question, because due to the security of blockchain, there's actually a trade-off that you can have, and that's that triangular trade-off between 3 factors. And I think it's got to do with your decentralization and your speed and your security. So if you've got to like focus on 2 of those aspects to basically jump between which one to focus on. So depending, that leads you to the choice of which blockchain are you going to use. And is it going to be an open blockchain? Is it going to be a closed blockchain? And then is that actually better than just using a database? So there's those aspects there that you really got to go through that design criterion when you first look at your project and go as a case by case. So for us, we've chosen, finally, we're looking at the Ethereum blockchain and also different layers of that, because there's the initial layer and there's the second layer. And we're trying to make sure that we can still provide that security and also that speed of use, and also to reduce the cost for the user, because in our case, the user will be wanting to spend less than, say, an SMS message for a transaction. And so only really recently, maybe this year, it's been possible to do some things like that to get that balance between those 3 aspects. So did that really answer that question?
Yeah. I think on the blockchain side, and then in terms of, efficiency and data and all of that and its application for renewable energy in general, how can blockchain help and advance renewable energy?
Also, that's bringing that extra transparency to your information for your transaction. And that's really what Niels has really touched on really well. So I definitely agree that getting the siloed information out of different silos of different aspects of the people doing the transaction or the generation or the consumption of the energy, and bringing that together in that centralized ledger, or actually decentralized ledger, depending on which one you're going to use, really does help with the efficiency of the whole system that you're doing.
Absolutely. Niels, I know you're involved in some projects and partnerships with ABB, and you're always in talks to discuss, opportunities to bring this technology to the more established companies. Do you see that there's a future for blockchain and the integration of blockchain into the platforms of these established electronics manufacturers, distributors, so forth?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, uh, again, blockchain and energy is just one minor part of all the applications of energy. Any transaction that you want some kind of verification on is an optimal transaction for blockchain. Keeping in mind that blockchain started out as, everybody knows about Bitcoin, right? And blockchain started out in that sense to sort of uh, keep and make sure that we have financial transactions that are verified and trusted. So there's I'm pretty sure there's a lot of blockchain talks within a lot of the big companies now. And then touching back on what Luke said, there's tons of different blockchains out there, right? Ethereum is one, uh, Bitcoin is another, and we're also, I think we're in the beginning of seeing this. There's no unified blockchain to use for energy. There's no unified blockchain to use for tracking consumer goods, something like that. And I think we're gonna see as we go on and progress. I think we're gonna see more and more different types of blockchains popping up, specialized blockchains for specialized purposes. And in that sense, I do think big companies, electric companies, manufacturing companies are gonna utilize this. I foresee a future not far ahead where ABB have developed their own blockchain, for instance, to track just ABB products. There's a lot of shipping and supply chain stuff that could be where blockchain could help a lot as well. And so I foresee a whole plethora of opportunities for blockchains, and this is what makes it also so very interesting that we're just we're just in the basics of it. When we started looking at our products, we looked at a ton of different blockchains to try to implement and see what it is, and it is that trifecta. You need to you need to understand where this is heading and what you want to do with it in a couple of years in order for you to see if this is a blockchain that's correct for you. Some blockchains will charge you for transactions, some will not. Some will have what's called a capped ledger size, meaning that the ledger doesn't grow any bigger than a certain size. And again, there's a gazillion different opportunities out there, and and this is just starting this whole journey, I think. So it's really interesting in that sense. And back to your, sorry for going on, but back to your original point, um, we're gonna, as we see all of these different opportunities develop, companies are gonna jump on them. Naturally, us startups are leading the innovation revolution, as we always do. But companies are going to pick up, and this is just the next step in any kind of trust and verification. So yeah, I foresee a ton of opportunities for companies within blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I see that, yeah, obviously startups are where a lot of the innovation starts. And it really has to, and these wild dreams and ideas are really coming about, you know, in your mind and other people's minds. But when you're a corporation, you have your base of business, and I see that, you know, there's a huge opportunity for innovation, but it obviously happens at the startup level. And you know, speaking of, you know, startups and all of that, Luke, you know, you're doing something that's unique in the energy sector as well as the blockchain sector. Can you describe this last mile issue and what role you're playing at Liquid Star to solve the last mile problem?
Yeah, pardon me. The last mile problem exists to get that energy to people where there hasn't been a grid access to get energy. And so there's like 1,000 startups solving this problem, and they're all doing their own methodology and great innovations in different aspects. And so, with about 1 billion people in the world without energy, that really is that last step. And it's kind of like similar to the problem of doing a transaction, like sending money. But in this case, it's getting energy. So for us, just to not be part of the grid is that way, because we've got that extra, probably just ability to go out there where other grids would be too expensive to build out. So we went through a lot of research with Liquid Star for about 2.5 years about the cost to build out those grids in, for example, Nigeria or in Benin. And it's going to take at least another 10, 15 years for them to actually get that grid out to them. So we're trying to just bring it forward a few more years so people get that energy, and then look at different areas of how to get energy to them quicker. So we're all about trying to do that speed to get to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think where there's people might think it doesn't make sense to charge a battery and deliver it, and it may involve people. Maybe an autonomous car is going to do it in the future. People might think that that's inefficient, but in talking on the previous panel, the smart grid panel that we did earlier today, and in past conversations, Shiba Bomik from Sinewatts described that there's about a 30 to 60% loss from the generation source to the end user along the way. So you're losing 60% of the energy in a lot of cases. And then the hotter it gets, like it did with the heat waves in California a few weeks or a month or so ago, the further decrease in efficiency you have. So this mass distribution of energy comes with efficiency losses. So I would say that, from the perspective of delivery of energy by cars or within batteries, that there's just such a massive amount of energy loss in transmission lines, not including the cost of building those transmission lines, which, are very expensive, as you would know. So I see, from my perspective, opportunity to avoid that cost of building out the distribution model, but not come at a sacrifice of efficiency in terms of when you compare it to the 30 or 60% of energy that's lost from the beginning to the end. So really, there's a huge opportunity, I think, for what I refer to as wireless energy, no power lines, to be integrated with technology that sends signals and informs where the energy is, where it's needed, and how to get it there with the right algorithms and process. So I see, just adding to your distribution infrastructure cost, there's also those efficiency losses that even with the distribution grid being in place, how are we truly going to decarbonize? How are we going to be efficient and not waste resources? There's very few things, like Shiba mentioned and others, that you can get away with losing. If you were in the water business and you lost 60% of your water, that's ridiculous. If you're in the oil business and you're losing 60% of your oil, I mean, any of these businesses where there's a commodity, that amount of loss and efficiency is such an insurmountable, or such a large loss, that we got to figure out a new way. And I think you're on track with Liquid Star there. Nils, could you share an example of what Rindblock has done in the marketplace through pilots and different examples, so the audience can better understand how and what you do affects consumer choice?
Well, we did a pretty interesting study with ABB where we did a pilot a few years like a year back with a real estate company, and then we scaled it up and did it with a few different locations with ABB in Sweden, their headquarters among others, and their big R&D research center. We measured the energy coming into a building or saturating the building based on how renewable that building is, or how renewable that energy is. So in that sense, if the building had solar panels on it, it would naturally be more renewable than a building without solar panels, because those solar panels would saturate the building first. So doing that, we hooked that up to a small lamp, which basically just went from red to yellow to green, depending on how renewable the energy in the building was. So very simple feedback loop. And you go into the building, you go into the office in the morning, you see that lamp sitting in the lobby, or you see it sitting in the cafeteria, and you see it's red. And then we've also encouraged people through smart signage and through and smart web application in their computers and phones, to maybe not consume energy if the light was red, maybe hold off with eating your lunch if the light was red, and maybe, I mean, don't charge your phones, stuff like that. Nothing that we forced on them. Nothing where we cut off the power or anything. Just small nudging like that. What we saw was interesting. Two things was really interesting. We thought that people were going to be consuming energy when the light went from yellow to green, and because we encouraged consumption in the green areas. But people were actually, not even consuming in the yellow areas. They were walking around telling their coworkers to, hey, light's not green, stay off it, which is really interesting. And that happened within like just a few days. Meaning, so that feedback loop was extremely extremely simple and intuitive to understand. But what we also saw was that through this small shift in consumption, we had a massive impact on how much we could lower the carbon emissions from in relations to the energy consumed in this building. So we could lower the emissions with about 120 kilos for the 1 month that we did this. And in other terms, that's about 4 or 5% of their total emissions. So related to energy. So, and this was just for optimizing on phones and computers. Doing the math, if we optimized on, let's say, kitchen appliances as well, which also happened, and let's say ventilation and then lighting, we could easily reach numbers of about 14 to 15%, which is quite big. And this is for a building in Sweden where we don't have that much carbon emitting energy production. We do have some, but I mean, our basis are the hydro and nuclear, but it's still a significant impact, just through like small easy nudging and encouragement, which to us, or to me anyhow, tells me that if people are informed and they have the correct tools to act upon it, they're going to make renewable and smart decisions.
Right. Well, that's intriguing that it was so effective where you're at, because there are places where there is a much greater mix of energy sources which are clearly not as clean as others. And so with as advanced Sweden and other areas are, where you have a higher degree of renewable energy and a higher degree of energy awareness, for it to be so effective when so much has already been done is pretty intriguing, because that gives good reason to believe that in markets where there's a lot more to do, it may actually make a bigger difference and further advance the goals of the rest of the world to achieve closer to what Sweden and other countries have. That's certainly powerful. And any amount of reduction in carbon footprint in the world close to that would be highly impactful for the world. That's pretty inspiring. Luke, on examples, and speaking of inspiration, can you kind of share maybe a story or something where you've seen the impact the Liquid Star has had on the lives of those who didn't previously have access to energy, and be it a battery or some small amount of energy that Liquid Star provides to the market with the Uber for Electricity model? Can you give our audience an idea of what kind of impact that makes on people's lives who don't have access to energy?
Oh yeah, sure. We've got a great story with it's in regional Nigeria last year. So one of our Power Rangers was situated near a university in, I think it's central Nigeria. and basically he was just going around promoting Liquid Star, and he found out that at the university, the people who were doing development work, so coding, they only had access to their computers while they're in the laboratory at the university. And then they have a lot of assignments and things to do, naturally. And so when they went home, they had the charge in their laptop or in their phone. They're coding on their phone or their laptop, and then it just went away, and then they couldn't continue doing their work. So that was really helpful for them. We got some direct feedback from some of those people, and they were able to go and continue coding through the night. And they were just really happy about that. And our Power Ranger was over the moon, and he was saying that they were walking, I think, more than 2 kilometers just to go and charge their phone up. So now they've got the battery in their dorm room or in their room there, and then they're just ready to do their work. So they were just over the moon, or just happy basically to be able to do their assignments and their work. So that was just a really great story for us, and it made us feel quite good.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I've been in communication with a lot more people across the world since I've started doing the Energy Independent show, and I get encouraged every day by people who send me messages who appreciate the access to information that these platforms provide, and all of our mutual efforts to bring information and ideas to the world. And I've seen some amazing things, and I can say that I've talked to people who grew up without electricity, and their mission in going to school and seeing the impact that it made on their lives is to take that access to energy and bring it to their local villages and their communities, so that they can have what we have in the developed world, which is access to energy and ultimately access to opportunity in the World Wide Web. So it's really amazing what impact energy can have. So that's certainly an inspiring story. Niels, on choice and consumer choices, what kind of impact does knowing how your food is produced, or is it using wind, is it using solar? Does the consumer knowing for sure in a verifiable way where the energy comes from with regard to their products, does that impact their product choices too?
We've done testing on that. Seeing that if you give that information, because consumers today are thirsty for any kind of information, but we've also noticed that they currently get flooded with tons of information from a sustainable standpoint. So it's a matter of actually breaking through with information that matters. We've seen that a lot of the information that in regards to sustainability today is what consumers relate to as binary. It's either you do something with sustainability or you don't, and then nobody actually goes out and officially says they're against sustainability. So everybody sort of falls in the sustainability bracket, and consumers don't really know how to relate to that. However, if you showcase your journey within sustainability, that is something that consumers can relate to. For instance, if you say that today our company is consuming 10% renewables on average over this last month. Consumers may think that that's either good or bad, but if you put that into relations and say, we are consuming 10% this month, we consumed 5% last month, and we're aiming for 20% next month, then you can follow along and see that journey, and you can see stuff happening and changing. And that is something that we've seen is really engaging with consumers. We did a test where we put an energy label on consumer products. We measured a normal supply chain, so production and distribution facilities, and and measured how much renewable energy went into those two facilities, and we followed a batch along from production through distribution to retail, and put stickers on it, and looked at how is this engaging for consumers. And we saw that not only were we able to increase sales, we're also able to increase what's called engagement rating. And for our trials and test products actually came out with an engagement ratings that was 6 times higher than as the industry standards for these products. So in that sense, and what we saw with it was that we did not necessarily we did communicate that this was of sustainable product, yes, but we also in that sense communicated the journey, and I think that's what was really engaging with consumers, that all of a sudden it becomes it goes from that binary, you don't really know what it is, to something that's more tangible, or something where you can follow along and look at what's happening, and sort of forecast in a simple way what's going to be happening in the future. So that is something that we've taken to heart, that sort of showcasing that journey is not only helping for a sustainable development, it's also helping for engaging in a sustainable development, and in that sense lifting the dialogue and lifting these kind of interactions.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective I hadn't thought of yet. Is getting buy-in in the process towards change, is going, the more information you have and the mechanisms to provide consumers and businesses the opportunity to do a new way, which is engaging. I think engagement is really what's needed in general when it comes to communication, which again is what we're doing here on the Energy Independent Show and then on this platform, the Clean Energy Revolution. But what it boils down to is communication and engagement, and enrolling people into the process, onboarding people into the process, I think is key. And it sounds really awesome that's what this does. It's very yeah, I take that to heart. That's pretty awesome. So Luke, in terms of, I'm gonna ask you a question more so like not related to necessarily what Liquid Star is doing now, but in terms of peer-to-peer energy trading or opportunities to track energy in general. I guess I'll shift the question actually. How does Liquid Star enable the use of batteries in ways that only your platform or blockchain can? In other words, prior to your using of and building out Liquid Star, it would be extremely improbable to try to deploy a business in Nigeria or anywhere in a third world country where you have uncertainty with regard to the security of products and their placement. How is Liquid Star really? How does blockchain and Liquid Star play a role in advancing the use of batteries and the distribution of energy?
I think it's quite simply put, it's it's a common rail where people can agree upon in a transaction manner. So, depending on if you're familiar with blockchain, maybe there's every 10 minutes, there's a different block in Bitcoin, in Ethereum, that's every 30, 40 seconds, depending on what's happening. So if you're working with that, there's a commonality between the participants who beforehand, there was a lot of disparity in the information and information asymmetry. So when you put the blockchain at work, depending if it's like the main layer blockchain or a second layer blockchain, like optimistic rollups or anything, basically it's a commonality of agreeing upon what's happened. It's pretty simple. What's happened in that last minute or two? And that's where really the innovation occurs. And so for Liquid Star with batteries, we're actually batching those processes. So we're doing a lot of off-chain stuff and then rolling it up and then bringing it into that commonality and that layer, in different tempos, depending on the use case and the scenario. So that's really where we see the innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally, I can only imagine the impact that transparency and distributed ledgers can have on the development of any type of marketplace in the developing world with regard to trust factors. It's really hard to trust politicians anywhere in the world, but particularly, places where there's there's dictatorships and things like that, for the public to be able to circumvent the uncertainty of the leadership or the lack of it, I think has huge potential in any marketplace. So I see that it's inspiring to think that innovation and technology can empower people to overcome the challenges in their local markets with regard to trust. You can trust blockchain, you can trust Renblock and LiquidStar. You may not be able to trust your local mayor. It won't matter in this case. So that to me, as a person in the world, I see as huge potential. So what I'm curious on both of you is, and I'll let you go after this question, is, what's your mission? I'll ask you, Niels, first. What's your mission, and what kind of partnerships are you looking for? Who is your ideal client, and what needs to happen in order for you to advance the role of Renblock in the world?
So our mission quite simply is to bring transparency to the energy market. That in itself is a very politician answer. So if I want to elaborate that a bit, I'd say something along the lines of I think the energy market is far removed from the energy consumer today in degrees of how much the energy consumer understands. And I think providing the energy consumers with insights and transparency allows them to sort of ask the right questions, put more pressure onto people, decision makers, the more and more opening it up for a more stable and fair marketplace in that sense, where you sort of shift the dynamics of power. So there, in my mind, the dynamics of power today in the energy market is skewed towards the energy producers and retailers, where the energy consumers are just kind of following along. And I want to see those balance out a bit, because then I think consumers are gonna push more demands for renewables within the market. Hopefully, we don't know, but what we've seen in so far is that is true. So with that, I guess our dream client, one of our some of our most target clients would ABB is a perfect opportunity for us. They're a massive player within the energy industry. They they make most all inverters in the world, and a lot of light switches and a lot of stuff that has to do with energy. So in that sense, they're a big purchasing power. And if they want to push some pressure onto things, they for sure can. So we have a good set with ABB, and similar clients. But any person who wants to know more and gain better insights into energy, I'm happy to have dialogues with and happy to talk to. We just want to spread the knowledge, I guess.
Put the power in the hands of the people, and in making the decisions that are informed for a better world. And the players, I would encourage the players that have that purchasing power, that ability to influence the marketplace, to integrate the innovation that Renblock offers, could dramatically, as we've heard, impact the efforts of our entire planet to try to live more sustainably. And consumer choice, and I would add that I believe that manufacturers and businesses who provide that opportunity are also going to see greater demand for their products by the consumers who wish to see this happen. So I would encourage anybody that besides ABB who's leading in this way to consider talking to you about what impacts transparency can have, and let's try some pilot projects. We need more to discuss about, more inspiring stories, right? So
well, yeah, definitely. We're happy to do that.
Yeah, I would love to see more of that. And then, Luke, can you tell us a little about the mission of LiquidStar and you and the team? I've had Connor and Scott on the show, and they've both really impacted me. And I could talk with you guys for hours as well as Nils about these exciting innovations. But can you describe the mission as well as who you're looking to partner with as to develop this technology, and what you see who those people are, and what essentially your ideal partnership would be to advance Liquid Star technology?
Okay, yeah. So for us, we're just a speck in the ocean at the moment with this huge amount of potential ahead of us. However, we're really aiming at getting towards like a protocol, because we can see that that's very inclusive of people in the energy industry and also just consumers in general. So we've got a roadmap to a protocol. So, but our main goal is really like getting as much energy to people as we can in the shortest time possible. And I'll add to that and with an anti-fragile way of looking at things, because that's a little bit abstract, but anti-fragility is really at the basis of what energy should be, I guess, in the future. And so we want to work with people who really like the idea of bringing that energy to people. So yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I certainly, I think a lot of people would agree that bringing energy to those who don't have it is a noble cause. And between what you're doing and Nils and others, I think blockchain will enable not just the delivery of energy, but the awareness of where it comes from as well, where you can have access to energy that is clean. And those without access to energy at this point in time, it would be wonderful if it was all renewable. And I think that's the direction. That's what both of you provide, is the opportunity for the consumer and to become a consumer as well as an informed consumer. And I would encourage anyone in markets where there are unpowered places to consider this. And as well, I see opportunity in Central California where I'm at. There are power outages, and there's big farms, and there's a lot of people who need energy even when the grid goes down, and who already have it as well. There's unutilized resources in the world that would be utilized if there was power. And so even where I'm at, there's farmland that has no power that with it could provide new resources and opportunities for the world. So I see tremendous potential to bring power where it's not, and to avoid power lines, much like phone lines were avoided in the developing world. India, Africa, there's no phone lines. It's very rare. And the same thing, I believe, would be beneficial to produce and provide microgrids and nanogrids in a way that circumvents the need for power and distribution and all of those losses and infrastructure costs that could be avoided, and also the impact that it could have on people's lives, to be able to read at night, to be able to code, and to be able to advance the community effort for whatever people are working on. Energy is extremely important, and we forget in the developed world how much it impacts and has enabled us to be educated, to be safe and healthy and happy. But we do need less fragility even in the developed world. We need more consistency, and we need more transparency. But I do really appreciate both of you coming on today. And we've had good conversations in the past, and I'm sure we'll have more in the future. But I would say it's really inspiring what you guys are doing. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing more innovation from the both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for
very
having
much.
us.
Thanks
All right,
very much.
guys. Okay, well, we'll see you guys later. And for the audience, tune in to Hot Energy News and Energy Independence Show, and we will see you soon.